Hi, everyone. I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us today for our Kargo Classroom series. I'm super excited to see so many participants here today. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. First off, just wanted to remind everyone this is a 3-part series, and between each session, you'll be getting a recording and some homework. So pay attention. Not only that, but we will have a question and answer section at the end of the session. So feel free to drop those into the Q&A section at the bottom right-hand corner, and want to make sure that if we don't get to those, we'll get to those for our part 2 series, same time, same place next week. And then finally, if you join all 3, a little incentive is you have a chance to win some AirPod Pros or an iPad. So without further ado, I'm really excited to present to you Johanna, a PowerPoint expert. I actually tried to get a couple of tips and tricks before the session and was very tight-lipped, so I'm excited to listen along as well. Joanna is a certified presentation specialist and founder of Presentitude. She's worked over 20 years in the communication industry, both in the US and in Europe. So she's got that global presence. And not only that, but is a board member of the industry organization Presentation Guild. So with that, I'll pass it over to you, Joanna.
Thanks, Amy. I will share my screen and get this started. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you all. I'm excited to be with you here today and for the next 2 weeks to speak about my absolute favorite topic, PowerPoint. As Amy mentioned, I work with PowerPoint for over 20 years. In Europe, I'm from Sweden originally. Now I'm based out of California. And although I haven't met you, I have made some assumptions about all of you. One assumption that I've made is that you know the basics of PowerPoint. You know how to find your way around a PowerPoint file. You can open a file, you create slides, you know the basic things. But I also am going to assume that none of you had any formal training in PowerPoint, and all of you can definitely find ways to work smarter inside of PowerPoint. Now, this content that I will be sharing with you with the next, this session and the other 2 sessions is based on what I see every single day when I work with corporate PowerPoint templates and training in PowerPoint. So these are things that I wish that my clients, my users would do more and better when they're creating their slides. Some housekeeping, I will be showing the PC interface of PowerPoint, but if you are on a Mac, you can absolutely follow along. These days, Mac and PC, PowerPoint looks more or less the same. There are some times where they differ, and I will point those out to you, but you should be able to find your way around what I'm showing you, even though if you're on a Mac. Okay, let's get started. So, we are talking today about design tools in PowerPoint. This is the first hour that we're going to spend together. The second hour, we'll talk about using these tools to create visuals. And the third hour, we'll be talking about design principles and sort of bring it all together into the final session. Today, we're going to talk about 3 things. We're going to set up PowerPoint, and we are going to talk about notes, pages, and handouts and presenter view, and we're going to talk about hacking, slide layouts, and placeholders. But the first part is setting up PowerPoint to optimize for our visual slide design. And here's a fact thing that I also have assumed about you. None of you have spent enough time thinking about PowerPoint and how to set it up and familiarize yourself with what you need to use when you're using PowerPoint. You probably just open up the file and try to survive creating those slides. So that's going to be the focus of this part, setting up PowerPoint and familiarizing ourselves with what I think are the most important tools when you're designing slides in PowerPoint. But first, I'm going to do some terminology because I want you to be on the same page as me when we go through this. And you might know all of these terms that I'm going to throw at you, but bear with me for just the next minute or 2 so that you know what I'm talking about when I'm using these PowerPoint words as we go along through this session. Okay, and as I mentioned, I will be using the PC interface, but it looks pretty much all the same on the Mac if you're using a Mac. The first thing I'm going to be talking about throughout these 3 hours is the PowerPoint template. The PowerPoint template file, when I talk about it, is the POTX file. That's a file extension. A template file is that file that opens up as a new presentation. It has branding and theme fonts and all of that. And when it opens up into PowerPoint, it is a PPTX file, and that is the general PowerPoint file that you then will be creating and saving as your own file. Every file, regardless of if it's a PowerPoint file or a PPTX file or a POTX file, is going to have some theme colors and theme fonts. We'll get back to those in session number 2 and 3. Every slide, every PowerPoint file also has slide layouts. Those are accessible through the new tab, and they can be few or they can be many. Every slide layout has some placeholders. So we're going to get back to the placeholder as well. And then on top of everything else, you can also place some objects on top of your slides. They can be text boxes, and shapes and images, and so on and so forth. When it comes to the interface, we will be talking about the tabs. The tabs are those little words at the top of your PowerPoint interface. And as you know, they might change when you do different things in PowerPoint. The whole area underneath the tabs is called the ribbon. The ribbon consists of groups of different commands that we will be using throughout these 3 sessions. Then we have the QAT. The QAT is a little menu at the top in the upper left corner, and we will be talking about that momentarily. And when you are in this normal view, we'll be getting back to different views here. You will see thumbnails to your left, you will see notes at the bottom, and you will see shortcuts to views in that lower right corner. So these are some terminology and items that I will be, words that I will be using throughout. And now you know what I mean when I'm talking about the ribbon and tabs and notes area and views and so on and so forth. Let's explore the QAT. The QAT, meaning it stands for the Quick Access Toolbar. It is a customizable toolbar that contains a set of commands that are independent of the tab on the ribbon that is currently displayed. This is important because, as you know, when you work in PowerPoint, depending on what you have selected, a different tab will be visible on that ribbon of yours. And if you need another command, you might have to click between the different tabs. But the QAT is actually a way for you to retain a number of commands that you can then use regardless of what tab is currently shown in that ribbon. So the good thing about this Quick Access Toolbar is that we can customize it, and we can make it to whatever we want it and need it to be. The start position of a QAT is at the top of the ribbon, above the tabs, but you have a choice to move it below the ribbon if you want to. If you're on a PC, unfortunately, or if you're on a Mac, you can only keep it at the top. Then you can choose whatever commands you want to keep on this Quick Access Toolbar. So you can customize this and set this up and use the most used commands that you need for your PowerPoint creation. And they will then always be there regardless of what you're doing on your, what you're doing in PowerPoint, whatever is shown on those tabs. How do you customize this? Well, there's a little tiny arrow, almost not visible, to the right side of this QAT. And if you click on that one and go all the way down, you'll see the More Commands. And when you click More Commands, you'll open up the PowerPoint Options interface. And here you can choose what commands you want on your Quick Access Toolbar, find them, add them to the right side, which is your Quick Access Toolbar command center. And then you can order them using the arrows up or down. If you're on a PC, you can't do that on the Mac, but you can still customize just like this. It looks a little bit different. And then if you're on a PC, you can also import or export a QAT file. So if you have multiple computers, you have one at work, you have one at home, and you want to have the exact same setup, but you don't want to go through this process, you can export your QAT out and then import it on another system. As part of your handout that will be sent out tomorrow, you will actually get a quick access toolbar file that you can import into your settings. If you haven't yet already set up your quick access toolbar, it will have all those commands that you see on the slide here to the right-hand side. If you're in a Mac, Mac does not allow importing quick access toolbars, but you can use the handout and see what commands I suggest you popularize your quick access toolbar with. Now, I use PowerPoint every single day. That's my job. That's what I do. I create PowerPoint templates, do makeovers, and so on and so forth. So my quick access toolbar is pretty advanced. And I have grouped all my quick access commands into different groups so that I can quickly find them. I don't have time to go around and find the different commands up on the tabs and in the ribbons. I just want them in my face so that I don't have to think about where they're at and quickly can get to them. And this, even though mine is probably a little bit more advanced than the regular PowerPoint user would use, having at least those that I show up on the side in the upper left corner there are the minimum of the type of commands you should have to make your PowerPoint life easier. So let's break down what are the commands that I recommend you keep on your quick access toolbar. We have format shape, selection pane, align and arrange, crop, and merge shapes. These are the 5 groups of commands that I really suggest you should have up here. And we will talk more about crop and merge shape in the next session, in session number 2. Today, we're going to talk and test out the format shape, selection pane, and align and arrange. So let's start out with the format shape, selection pane, and align and arrange by taking some sample content and pretend that we are going to create a slide with some text, some icons, some lines, and organize these items into a slide using these 3 command groups as we do that. So let's start with the format shape. So the format shape tab will open up if, depending on what you have selected in PowerPoint, and it might call format graphic or format image, depending on if you have selected an image or a graphic or a shape. So it changes its name, but the principle and the commands are pretty much the same. So in order to get to the format shape, you can also right-click when you have selected something and click format shape at the very bottom, and that will activate the format shape. Now, I want this to go quick for you because I want you to get to this format shape menu as fast as you can. So I want you to keep the format shape in the QAT, in your QAT, so you can quickly get to it. And when you click on it, if you right click, you can get to format shape, but if you have it on your QAT, if you have that little command on your QAT, you will get quicker to this format shape menu that will open up on your right-hand side of your PowerPoint interface. This format shape menu has 3 different submenus, and it's not easy to actually see because if you click, you need to click on these different icons to get to the different functionality. But there's 3 areas. We have fill and line, effects, and size and properties. So you can click between those icons and get to whatever you need to get. So let's say, for example, that we want to format these text boxes we have here and make sure that they have the same height and width and alignment. We can use the format shape and the size and properties menu on the format shape and make sure that they have the same height and width, that they do not auto fit, and we can change the padding of those text boxes, making them exactly the same, which will make it easier momentarily to align them together. If you have lines, you can click on all the lines, and in the format shape menu, you can see the in the file and line menu, you can quickly format your lines and the width and the color and all of that. You can do this, of course, using the commands on the ribbon, but you can only do 1 command at a time, whereas when you are in the format shape menu, you can do multiple things at the same time. You don't have to click in and out. So it's going to save you a lot of time. Okay, let's talk about the selection pane. We have formatted our lines, our text boxes, and all of that. Let's move over to the second thing that I want you to have on your quick access toolbar, your QAT, the selection pane. Now, we're not going to talk about animations today. We will talk about those on the next session, next week. But if you want to be able to do great animations and create them quickly, you have to rock the selection pane. Good animations start with having a great selection pane set up. Okay, how do you access the selection pane if you don't have this command on your quick access toolbar? The selection pane will show up on the home tab under the arrange button. And if you click on the arrange button and go all the way down, you'll get to the selection pane. That's a lot of work to getting to one of the most critical features in PowerPoint. So please put the selection pane on your quick access toolbar. When you click on the selection pane, you'll get this menu opening up. What can you do with the selection pane? Well, here you can select your objects. You can change their order. You can change visibility. You see there's a little eye icon there. You can toggle things on or off if you want them to be visible on the slide or not. Maybe you're having items that you're using as a blueprint, you don't want those to be seen, you can uncheck that little eye and they will go away. Everything you put on a slide will show up in the selection pane. And as you can see here, we have 3 straight connectors, we have 3 graphics, we have a number of text boxes, and we have that title placeholder there as well. These names, straight connector 24, text box 35, they're generic names created by PowerPoint, and PowerPoint is going to give you names for your objects, whether you want it or not, but your job is to go in and make sure that these have names that make sense to you, especially and very especially if you are going to animate. Because if you're going to animate and you want these different pieces in a sequence, you want to know whether or not text box 36 should come in before text box 44. And I promise you, you won't remember which one is which. But what you can do is rename your objects like I just did here. So now we have line right, line middle, line left, icon viewability, icon click, icon video, and so on and so forth. You can rename to whatever logic that makes sense to you, as long as you rename them if you're planning on creating an animation on your slides. And I think that animations are a great way to build communicative slides, and we'll talk about more of that in session number 2. The selection pane also shows the C order, and by C order, I mean the order of which the different objects on your slide is presented. So everything, if the lower the item, the more in the back they are, and if it's at the top of this line, it's going to be at the front of your slide. So let's say we're going to add in a background to these objects on the slide that we're currently trying to design here. So we're going to add in a gray rectangle. I renamed it frame, and as you can see, it is at the bottom of this list, which means that that item is behind everything else that is on this particular slide. So that is also a quick way for you to organize things and see where they are in terms of relation to one another. So the selection pane comes in handy. Even if you're not building an animation, you can reorder things quickly here by dragging things up and down and moving them around as needed. Now, you can, of course, rearrange things in terms of order if you use the arrange tools as well. But, and I'll get into the align and arrange tools on the next slide. But the arrange functionality in the selection pane is much more of a visual way of seeing where your objects are stacked on top of one another as a C order on this slide here. So let's talk about the align and arrange tools. This is the third group of commands that I want you to have on your QAT. And if you don't have the align or arrange tools on your QAT, when you select an object, you will get to the shape format tab, and here you will have that little drop down button called align. And when you click on the align, you'll get all the different align tools. The align options are, you can align things to the left, to the center, to the right, to the top, to the middle, to the bottom. You can distribute your objects horizontally or vertically. You can align them to the slide or to selected objects. And you can also, as I mentioned, get to that C order organization by using the bring to front or send to back tools. You can bring things to the front or bring forward or send to back and send backward. I think from a PowerPoint design standpoint that these are the most important tools ever in PowerPoint. That is the first thing that I always have to do when I get makeover decks to me. I have to go in and realign things and making sure things line up nicely on the slides. And again, you can get to these tools, but you have to work for it. So if you put these on your quick access toolbar, they're right there ready for you to use whatever else you're doing on the slide. So let's put this into action. So let's take these 3 icons, these 6 text boxes, and these lines, and turn them into a slide using these tools we just talked about. So the first thing that I usually do when I use the align tools and create a slide is that I take the main object, and in this case, it is a middle text box here. That's going to be the main thing for my slide. I have already made sure that all the text boxes have the same width and height. That's going to make it easy for me to quickly arrange them on the slide. And I did that using the format shape, making sure they have the same width. And when they have the same width, I can distribute them horizontally onto my slide quickly, one click, boom, I'm done. The second thing I will do is to align my other objects, and I usually try to align them left to whatever that distribute horizontally, added them to the slide. You can, of course, align things in center. I usually recommend, if you're not a professional designer, try to align things to the left. Center alignment is tricky and hard. It is much more work to get it looking good, and you lose some readability as well. So aligning left is usually the safest bet when you do alignment. Then you can align to the bottom, like I did here, align all my text and all my icons to the bottom using the alignment tools. And as you can see by my dotted lines here, everything on this slide has been lined up to one another quickly and easy, using first a format shape, making sure everything has the same size and width, and then also using the align and arrangement tool. We will animate this slide in the next session, so that's why I also renamed all my objects so we can quickly get to them when we build that animation. Now, how do you know what to align to? I think that the grid and guides is also one of the underutilized features in PowerPoint. There are fixed and adjustable drawing guides in PowerPoint to which objects can be aligned to the slide. Fixed guides means that they are set on the top master and you cannot move them accidentally. They are just there. You can't move them around. Adjustable means that they are on top of the slide and you can move them around and use them to align your objects when you are building your slide. Usually, the main content area is used as a blueprint for the main grid. So if you have a good corporate template, your guidelines should be set up, and sometimes that's not always the case. So if that's not the case, I usually take the main like title and content slide, and that's sort of giving me an indication of what the framework, what the grid is for our slide. So you should have fixed guidelines. If you have a good corporate template, they should be locked on the master, and then you can have adjustable ones that you move around on the top. Now, if you are in your PowerPoint template or in PowerPoint in general, and you don't see these guides at all, well, first of all, they might not be set up. So that might be one reason. But another fairly common reason is that you might have accidentally turned the guides off. It's a local setting. So regardless or not if the guides are in the template or the PowerPoint file, you might not see them. If you don't see your guides, go to the View tab and check in the Show group the command Guides, and you check that little box. That will make the guides be reappearing on your slides again. Now, the guides, they are only visible when you are in edit mode, so you don't have to turn them off to share your presentation or turn them off to print or anything like that. You can just leave them on all the time as needed. When you show your presentation, you won't see the guidelines. And when you print or save as a PDF, they won't be seen as well. So I know that a lot of people think that they might, and that might be the reason that they turn the guides off, but you can keep them on at all times. You can also add your own, again, using when you want to arrange things and align things on your slide, you can add your own guides to your presentation. You right click, use the grid and guides, and you can add horizontal guides and vertical guides to your slide, and then drag them around as needed and align your content to them. And when you don't want them anymore, or there's just way too many and they're making things more cluttered than easier to use, you just take these adjustable guidelines, those that are not locked on the master, and you just drag them to the side or to the top and the bottom, and they're gone. And now if you wanted a guideline again, you just have to bring one in by right clicking and adding a guideline back into the onto the slide. So this grid framework is important to have identified and know where it is, especially when we're going to hack slide layouts later, because we want to make sure that every slide that we are creating is based off of the branding of your corporate template, making sure that we don't place anything on top of a logo or any other graphic, and stay consistent and coherent throughout a slide deck. Now, all of these commands that I talked about, the alignment tools, the format shape, and the selection pane, they're great tools in PowerPoint, very underutilized, but there are a lot of other features that are actually don't even exist in PowerPoint for whatever reason. But there are smart people out there who have taken these ideas of how PowerPoint can work better and built add-ins to PowerPoint. So I wanted to take a moment and just talk about the 3 add-ins that I use all the time as a PowerPoint designer. Add-ins are supplemental programs that add commands or features to your PowerPoint. And these are my 3 favorites that I use pretty much all the time, every single day. We have BrightSlide by Bright Carbon, Thor the Hammer, and SlideWise by Noise Power. And I have linked all of these add-ins in the handout, so you will have a clickable link in the handouts so you can get to them and test them out and try them out. And that's also part of the homework to try these out. Now, some of you are working in corporations where they have blocked add-ins, and that's unfortunate, but that's, you know, security and all of that. But if you have a chance to test out an add-in, please do as you can, because I think they add a lot of features. Let's talk about the first one, my all-time favorite, BrightSlide. This adds critical functionality to PowerPoint, and this is a great one because it's available for both Mac and PC. And that's unusual for add-ins because Mac has a very restrictive environment that makes it very hard for these add-in programmers to add add-ins to the Mac. When you install BrightSlide, you'll get a new tab that's going to show up there on your slide. You can see the tab. And BrightSlide just adds a ton of functionality on top of the things that I just showed you. The alignment tools are amazing. There's format tools, the selection and object, animation, file and master. Everything you ever wished PowerPoint could do is going to be in this add-in. And you can, for example, if you have a number of different shapes and you quickly want to turn them into the same shape, you can do that with BrightSlide. So that is one thing that I definitely suggest you test out. The second add-in that I use all the time is a very simple add-in. It makes it easy to quickly align and set objects in PowerPoint. This is for PC only, unfortunate. It is very basic and simple, but it's doing its job. When you install it, you get a new tab, PPT Tools. That's the company that makes this add-in. It is a free add-in. And what it does is very simple. It stamps and memorizes the position and the shape. So you can move quickly things from slide to slide into the same position. If you have a big deck and you want the same object in the same position every single slide, you can use this Thor the Hammer add-in to do that. And the third add-in is called SlideWise. It makes it easy for you to control and clean up your PowerPoint deck. This is unfortunately for only PC. I know that they're working and trying to figure out a way of bringing this to Mac, but SlideWise is an amazing tool, especially if you are the person who is in charge of creating high-end corporate presentations where you have a lot of images and a lot of slides that every user, everyone on the sales team or marketing they have to reuse and put into their decks, and you want to control that this is at its best health ever. SlideWise will give you an insight of what's going on in your deck. It's going to show you all the images that are in the deck, how big they are, because that is a thing that is an unfortunate thing these days, that we have bloated slide decks with all those nice stock photographies that is brought in from stock sites, made for print, and PowerPoint is not a print medium. PowerPoint is a screen medium. We do not need those extreme high resolution images, and they will bloat down our files, and you won't be able to email them, and they're just gonna, it's just gonna end up filling up our storage. So SlideWise will show you exactly what's going on in terms of the images, and it will also show you what's going on in terms of fonts. So if you have a brand font that you want to make sure that everyone is using, then SlideWise can show you what other fonts might have sneaked in there. So this is a great add-in for that. It's not a free add-in. It's an add-in you pay for, but it's if you are that person that is in charge of PowerPointing in your organization, I can highly recommend this add-in for you. Okay, we've talked about some functionality and add-ins. Let's move over to the second part, notes pages, speaker notes, and presenter view. In today's world where we do more and more online and virtual presentation, it is even better, it is even more important to build smart decks when we are creating our presentations. We might not see our audience, we might be at home, or half of our audience is at home and we are in the office. So we need to understand how we can make PowerPoint work for us, and take control of the notes pages and presenter view is even more crucial. I have noticed over the course of time when I teach PowerPoint that not everyone is familiar with the different views of PowerPoint and what they can do. So I'm going to take a moment to go through that before we dive into the notes page and what that can do for you. There are five presentation views of PowerPoint. If you go to the View tab, you'll see all of these 5 views. Let's take a quick look at all of them. This is the normal view, and this is, of course, something you're extremely familiar with. This is where you are spending your days when you're PowerPointing. You will see the slide, you will see the notes area, you will see the thumbnails to the left. And if you don't see the notes section, I'll show you in a moment why that is and how you can bring it back in. And this is the full interface of PowerPoint, and this is where you spend most of the time, of course, in PowerPoint. The second view is the outline view. This is a little bit of a less used view, but it is perfect if you create your presentation in, for example, Word as a long form document. You can bring all your text over and just copy and paste it in the outline area to the left, and then use your tab and enter to go between, and PowerPoint will quickly help you create slides for you without you having to go in and click new slide, new slide, new slide. You can just do it at once in the outline area. It takes a little bit of a practice to do this, but I know people who are full experts at creating their presentations first in the outline view before they go in and start editing their slides. Now, and you can still see the notes section here, even if you are in this outline view. The third view is the slide sorter view. This shows a thumbnail version of all your slides, and you can also add sections here and start organizing your slides. So if you right click somewhere, you can just add a section, you can rename the section, and you can then reorganize the section. So you can quickly make reorganizations to your decks, especially if you have a longer deck that you are working on. So if you're the person who is in charge of your big corporate deck, this is where you can organize your things very neatly and quickly in this slide sorter view. So this presentation that I'm showing you now, for example, this is the slide sorter view of that presentation. It has been set in 5 different sections, so I can keep control of all the different slides and make sure that I have everything nice and neatly ordered. And another added feature of the slide sorter view is that when you see this, you see the slide numbers, and you also see some little icons next to the slide number. That shows you if you have any transitions set for that slide or any other things going on. And if you have timing set up, if you're creating a self-going slideshow, you'll see those timings as well. So this is a very usable view here. Then we have the fourth view. This is the notes page view. This is a very nice and rarely used built-in feature in PowerPoint. The notes page will show a thumbnail of the slide and the notes page placeholder in this page. It's not a slide, but it looks like a slide, but it's actually more of a page. It's like a second slide, a second page of your deck. You can add whatever you want onto this page here. You can add more pictures, text boxes, graphs, images, whatever you need, and you can move things around. And it's one notes page per slide. So this is sort of a behind the scenes version of that slide that you are showing. The notes page is only shown when you are in the View tab, Notes page view, but you can actually print this and save this as a PDF. So you just go into the printer settings and you say that you want to print your notes pages, and that's going to create a nice PDF file, or print it as on paper if you prefer paper printing. And then you can distribute the notes page version of your deck to your users. Your notes page might be set up horizontally like here, or vertically, or not at all. Unfortunately, I see that all the time, that a lot of corporate PowerPoint decks doesn't have the notes page set up. So you might have to do some work on that if you wanted to use this feature. But if it's set up, it's a great way to add some functionality to your slides. And I'm going to come back to the notes page in a moment. Now, the last view is the reading view. The reading view allows you to show your presentation in full screen, so you can see exactly what you see in slideshow mode. So you'll see all the animations that you've added onto the slide, but it's not going to fill your whole screen. So if, for example, you're working on a laptop and you want to have your slide show in one area of your screen and then work on something else on the other side, you can do that. So it's sort of like a mini version of the slideshow mode. So it's really useful if you needed to use that if you only have one screen. So in sum, we have our 5 different PowerPoint views here, and let's talk about where you can edit things and what you can use to present things, because that is what we want to do with our PowerPoint presentations. We need to present them at times as well, not only create slide decks. So we have the 2 edit views. We have the normal view, that's where you usually do all your editing. And then, of course, we have that notes page view where you also can edit the behind the backside sort of your slide. And then we have 2 presenting views, so to speak. We have the slideshow and we have presenter view. Let's start with slideshow. So the slideshow, when you activate slideshow, the presentation will go full screen if you have a 16:9 template. If you have a 4:3, you'll see black bars on each side of the screen, but 16:9 will fill the screen nicely. If you have multiple screens, this will be on your main screen unless you change it in the PowerPoint settings. You access the slideshow through the slideshow tab. That's its own tab in PowerPoint. And this is where you control everything that goes with your slideshow. And this is also where you activate that other presenting view, the presenter view. The presenter view has to be checked for it to show up. And presenter view shows the full screen slideshow on one monitor and the speaker view on the other. So it will show you the current slide. It's going to show you the notes, and it's going to show you the next slide or next animation if you have animations on your slide. And also it's going to show you how much time have passed and the current time, which also comes in handy if you're running a presentation to know and have that sort of in your face as you're presenting. Now, Microsoft has done a lot of work on accessibility, and there are a lot of features. I'm not going to go through them in this session, but there are a lot of features added to make your presentations more accessible. And one of them is that there's now subtitles available. If you are on the Office 365 subscription version, you have subtitles that you can activate, and that's going to bring in subtitles for your presentation. You can record slideshows with subtitles and so on and so forth, which is it really comes in handy if you need to do that as well. Now, how do you use presenter view together with slideshow view? How does this work all together? So when you have 2 screens and you activate slideshow mode and you have presenter view checked, you will have your main presentation, your slideshow on one screen and presenter view on the other screen. And this, exactly how this is set up, you control that on the slideshow tab. But if you only have one screen and you still want to use presenter view when, for example, doing a Zoom presentation, what can you do? Because presenter view is a great way of showing those speaker notes. Well, here's a hack for you. When you go into Zoom or any other video sharing program, don't share your full window, but share just an area of your screen. That's usually an option. And you can define that area to be just that slideshow preview that you have in presenter view. That means that your audience will only see that little outline area there, but you will see the rest of the interface. So you get the full effects of the presenter view, but you've only shared that small area for your audience. Okay, how do you control these speaker notes then? How do you get to them and how do you edit them and what can you do with them? So let's take a look at the speaker notes, and let's go back to what I showed you before, the normal view, one of the first default views in PowerPoint. When you, anything you add into this notes area down below the slide will show up as speaker notes. Now, if you have the normal view open on your PowerPoint and you don't see this notes area here, you can either on the view tab, click on the notes, or there's a little area, little button on the lower right area next to the view sections where you can click on notes, and that's going to expand that area, or close it if you prefer to actually not have it open because you want more real estate when you're designing your slides. But anything you have added into this notes area in the normal view will show up on, it will also show up on the notes page, that's the same area, and in presenter view as your speaker notes. You can edit this, the notes either in the normal view or in the notes page view. They're mirrored to one another. So whatever you add on in the normal view notes area will show up on the notes page view, and that will also show up in the presenter view area as your speaker notes. However, you can't edit your speaker notes in presenter view. Unfortunately, that would be a great feature if Microsoft were to add that, but at this moment you can't. So this is how you can control what shows up when you're doing a presentation, and the speaker notes, you add them in either the normal view or in the notes page view. Now, you might ask, why would I ever edit my speaker notes in notes page view? Well, as you know, the normal view area is a very small area that is very horizontal down there in the lower below your slide. And if you have a lot of notes that you want to add in, it is much easier to see those speaker notes in the notes page view because you get more real estate and you get the full area for those notes. So that would be one reason that you might want to move over to notes page view as you add your speaker notes in there. What else can you use these notes for? So let's say, and I really hope you're not creating a slide like this, even though it's very common, but let's say that we have a lot of information to cover. There's a lot of bullets, a lot of text. But this slide, if this is something that you create, is going to kill your audience. They will be bored to death. What can you do? Well, you still need to share all this information with your audience, but you are going to present this and you don't want to show this very cluttered, text-intensive slide. Do this instead. First, create a slide and not a document like we just saw. Create a slide with your main points, maybe just a main headline you want your audience to remember, maybe add some visuals to that slide. And then you present your facts and figures to your audience. You are the presentation. You'll tell the story. You'll tell the facts and figures to the audience. This is what they'll see, and they'll hear you talk to all these different points and figures that is part of the presentation. And then you create the handout using the notes page. So all the handouts are in the handouts, the notes are in the handouts area, and this handout is what you actually share after the presentation is done, because the slide in itself is not a good handout because it's way too little information for those who come back and look at this deck and, you know, a week later or so on. And you can use that handout, the notes page, to create that handout and give this to your presentation. You can add whatever you want onto this page. You can add additional graphs, you can add source information, more photos, tables, what have you. You have that whole page to add things per slide to this handout area. But what if you want to do both a handout and have speaker notes? And of course, this handout, that's not a good speaker note. That's just full sentences and way too much text. What can you do? Well, here's a hack for you. So in the notes view, and again, you get to the notes view by clicking on the view tab and the notes page, you can drag that notes page placeholder off to the side of the slide. Now this placeholder is still there. PowerPoint will still find it, and whatever you have in there will be your speaker notes. It's going to show up in the notes area. In the normal view, it's going to show up as speaker notes and presenter view, but it won't show up when you print the notes page or when you save it as a PDF because it's outside of the slide. Only things that are on the slide will show up when you print it. So then you can, as a second step, create text boxes and add other objects to the notes page, and thereby you have your handout ready to go, but you also have your speaker notes ready to show up in presenter view as you present these slides to your audience. So that's a hack of the views that you should be familiar with and used to the most and just put a lot of use into those different views. What other hacks can we make as we talk about setting up PowerPoint? Well, if you have a PowerPoint corporate template, they should give you a basic setup of slide layouts that you can use to stay on brand. But sometimes that's not always the case. They are available. The slide layouts you have in your corporate deck are available through the new slide on the home tab. And then you get all the slides show up, the slide layouts show up there. And you might have many slide layouts or you might have very few. But my main point is that take some time to familiarize yourself with what your corporation has provided to you as part of the lineup and what you can do with these slide layouts and what you have to work with. Every slide layout has one or more placeholders. Slide layouts are based off of different numbers of placeholders. They're preset areas that adds to specific type of content such as text, images, tables, and charts. Let's talk about the main 4 type of placeholders. We have, of course, the title placeholder that's usually on every single slide. We have content placeholders, text placeholders, picture placeholders, and chart placeholders. You can see what type of placeholder you have on the slide layout by looking at the number of icons inside of the placeholder. That's your cue. So as you can see in the content placeholder, you have 8 types of content you can add in, whereas in the text placeholder, you can only add text into this placeholder. Now you can duplicate or copy and paste placeholders to the slide. On the slide. So if you have one placeholder, you can copy and paste it or duplicate it. But if you try to copy and paste between different slides, that's going to cause some problems. But on the slide, you can duplicate and copy and paste them. Now, placeholders are a great way of adding images into your slide, and it is important to know the difference on how images behave depending on what placeholder you're using. So how does pictures use in placeholders? So if you have a content placeholder and you add an image in, it's going to retain its original dimensions and fill that placeholder either horizontally or vertically, depending on the original dimensions of the placeholder. If you have a picture placeholder, however, it's going to fill the placeholder to its brim, to the edges, and going to crop that, that image into that placeholder. That's why we need that crop button on the quick access toolbar I told you about initially. We're going to do this in the second session next week. You can, of course, always copy and paste or insert your image to the slide without using a placeholder at all. And that means that the original image will retain its dimension and size that it came with, and then you have to resize it and put it into place. So use the slide layouts as your starting point when you are creating slides. But sometimes it can be hard to match up the type of slide layouts available in your corporate deck and the type of slide that you need to create. So here are some ways to hack slide layout quickly to create slides that you need for your next upcoming presentation. Don't use all the placeholders. Even though this particular slide layout here has 4 text placeholders and 4 subtitle placeholders, we don't only need to use this slide layout when we have 4 content areas. We can use whatever we need and remove the rest. So we can remove those 3 subtitles and 3 text placeholders and create something like this. Quick and easy, everything is set up, placeholders have preset levels, all the formatting is already there. We don't have to think about line spacing or bullets. It's all set up for us. So hack the slide layout and don't use all the placeholders. You can also resize placeholders. So let's say we wanted to add an image in and we want to add some text, but none of the image placeholders in our slide deck are to the dimensions that we want, then we can resize the placeholders and we don't have to use the title placeholder, even though it's always there. We can just use the text box. If you resize a placeholder, a picture placeholder, always resize it before you add the image in. That's going to make it easier to retain the original dimensions of that image. But you can take a slide layout and then slightly modify it by resizing the placeholders from their original setting. And then we have the third option, and that is to create your own size. None of the slide layouts matched up with what you wanted to create. So you can use one of the, like the title only or the blank one to create your slides. Again, make sure that you align your content to that grid area so that everything looks cohesive and nice on your slides, even though you're not using placeholders. But we can use this one to create, for example, the slide we just created a few moments ago, and we can use that title only slide layout to do that. Now, templates. And these are some samples of templates that I've created in the past with a multitude of slide layouts for their users to use. They still might not give you all the variants that you need, but they should give you a brand framework. They should save you time and they should give you a head start, but you still might have to hack some of these slide layouts to create the size that you're creating. And now we have set up the tools for that. We've talked about the different behind the scenes views you can use to do that. So with that, we have reached the end of this session. We will come back and talk more about creating visuals in PowerPoint and design principles for PowerPoint in the next 2 sessions. The homework you will receive tomorrow is going to be customize your QAT. You can use the file that I provided if you're on a PC, or you can create your own QAT using the guides in the handout file if you're on a Mac, or if you're on a PC and prefer to do it on your own, or maybe you already customized your QAT and you want to add some of the commands I just told you about. Then we have 3 projects for you. The first one is to create a slide using the tools we talked about today. And the second project is to actually do that notes page and create a handout and test the speaker notes and presenter view. And the third project is to test those add-ins and see how they work out for you and how they can add functionality. And with that, we're going to move over to Q&A. And Amy, let me know what questions we have in the Q&A.
Yeah, absolutely. So had a couple of questions in the beginning of the presentation, really about the quick access toolbar. If you could kind of go through how to get to that, and then also what you normally add to it.
Absolutely. Let me quickly go out of presenter view so I can bring up a slide and we can share that one. So I'm going to quickly bring that over here. Okay, so Zoom. I'm going to share my screen here. Okay, so here's my quick access toolbar as I showed you in the session, and I have a PC, so I can keep it below. If you're on a Mac, you can only keep it at the top. When you want to access these commands, this is a little arrow out here. So you will click on that little arrow, and that's going to open this menu for you. And they actually have some preset options here that you might want to choose, but I'm more picky. I want the design tools available to me. I know how to save and email and spelling and all that. I need the design tools here. So I'm going to go down here to more commands. And that's going to open up the PowerPoint options window. And it always is going to take us to the quick access toolbar right away. And then we have the left-hand area. This is where we have, first they have the popular commands. And again, if you're on a Mac, it looks a little bit different, but the essence is the same. So you have the available commands on the left-hand side. You can say, I want all the commands, or you can go in and find them from different tabs. So for example, if I know that I want to have my crop tool from the image tab, I might go in here and find it and then add that out. And then when I find a command, so let's say I wanted to add this add animation command here, I'll just click on the add and it's going to bring that one in. So now it's here. Now I can reorder them up and down. And then as soon as I click OK, it just added that command up here to my quick access toolbar. If I wanted to change it again, click on the arrow, more commands, and I can go in and redo that and undo that because now I don't want that anymore. I'm just going to remove it, and then I click OK. If you want to use the quick access toolbar that I sent you, which actually has the main commands that I use all the time, and which I think is sort of the minimum of the type of commands, you'll go to the import export and you just click on import customization file. So you get that file in the handout from Kargo, save the file locally somewhere on your computer, find it, import it, and then boom, it's there ready for you to use. But otherwise, this is what you'll do. And the same thing, Mac and PC, you'll go in and more commands and you find the commands you want. And the ones that I suggest are in the handout file. You're going to see those that I suggest having there.
Awesome. And then just building off that, we had another question come in while you were going through that. Someone said, more commands doesn't work for me. Is it possible that it's locked? They said they've tried the help menu, but can't make it work. Is there any way to make sure things are unlocked?
That's interesting. It shouldn't be. Maybe it is because of a system. If you are on a corporate computer, because it does change that file in the back end. So maybe that it comes from the, I haven't heard that you shouldn't be able to customize your quick access toolbar, but it might be that they're locked to do changes to the interface if they're really on a on a restrict system. But it should be just clicking on that little arrow and finding the more commands and changing that. You get to the PowerPoint option. Another way is to come to the options. That's going to open up the same menu. So you go to the file. If you're on a PC, you go to file, and then down here you have options, and you click on that. That's going to open up the PowerPoint option interface, and then we have the quick access toolbar, and that should take you to the same area. But again, if that still not works for you, it might be because there's some locks in the back end. But otherwise, I've never heard that it shouldn't lock. So I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for that.
Great. Okay, so then looking through a couple other questions that were in the chat. When you're going over alignment and aligning things, are you able to align objects that are on multiple slides at a time, or does it just have to only be on that one slide?
Only on the slide. You can only align things on the slide. It does one slide at a time. However, if you're on a PC and you can install the PPT tools, the hammer tool that I showed you, that means that you can set the alignment on one slide and then you memorize it. So if we go in here and we say a new slide and we insert quickly a shape, and we have that in a position, we can memorize that shape and size. Thor will now remember this, and then if we create a new slide and we insert the shape in a different area, and then I go back to my hammer tool and I click on the hammer, it's going to remember the size and the position. So that's why I love the PP tools if you're in a PC, because you can do that across slides. So you can quickly just do that across slides, but otherwise, yeah, it's only per slide.
Okay, great. And then I think we have time for one more question. And just as a reminder for people that joined in a little bit late, we're going to keep the questions that weren't answered today. We'll start the next session with all of those questions. So feel free to continue sending questions until the end of this. But someone asked, and I think this would be great for the next session, is that they don't currently have Microsoft Office. Do you have any tips on how to get a free trial, or just to make sure so next time people can follow along if they don't have it?
Oh, well, there should be free trials, I'm pretty sure. And I think that the PowerPoint online version, if I'm not mistaken, but I'm not a Microsoft expert in that sense, it should be free, just like Google Slides. I think you can use the online version. And the online version of the Microsoft suite is actually pretty powerful. So the online version works equal. If most of the commands are there, most of the things we're going to do should work in the online version. But there should be a free trial. Most of these software have free trials of the, you can go and check it out. I think that there is a free trial. There are, otherwise for Microsoft, the Office suite, you can either buy the subscription model or the standalone product. But yeah, try and see if the online version is free. I think it might be. And otherwise, try the trial version. I think it's like a 14-day free trial or something like that.
Great. Well, thank you again, Joanna, for walking us through part one. Part two will be next week, the same time, and feel free to continue putting those questions in, and we'll make sure that we transfer those over for next week.
See you next week.